exactly what you guys are talking about.
Mm.
I play D&D.
Mm-hmm.
So you could take all of this with the same medium.
Mm.
When I create a world, I create a pivot point. For me, it was Dark Souls. I love the mythos of Dark Souls, the First Flame, all that, all the creation mythos of it. And then I took all the fantasy races of the systems I use, and I put them all together and figure out on a D100 table, this person is doing this action. And I roll on it. And if it's under a 5 or under a 10, irreparable damage. Like there's no way to come back from this. If it's above 100 or 95 to 100, then they succeed in everything they wanted to do. And then I do this over and over and over until I get to the point where I could sit there and say, okay, so because of these courses of actions, visually they would be using these weapons, these
Sorry, real quick,
armor.
I don't play D&D, so a lot of these mechanics stuff, they don't click with me, so you have to speak in broader terms, so then everyone else in the audience can also understand.
God of War.
Sure, yeah.
He's a Nordic individual.
Yeah.
He didn't start that way.
Mm.
He started as Kratos,
Yeah.
the ghost of, the gods. He started as a god slain, as a puppet. In the latest God of War, he has all the furs and visually he has changed.
Yeah.
So how do you figure out that change? How do you figure out that story progresses? You lay that framework and then go, okay, because of all these events, this is what they visually would be like. If they started with a heroic stance, why did they start with heroic stance?
Yeah,
why are they going down to that sad point? Why are they going back up?
You gotta, obviously, it's important as much as you change your character in the narrative to follow that visually. So, this I guess the character arc needs to be expressed visually in the comic.
As well as storyline wise, because
Right.
if one speaks a different tone and the other one is a complete separate tone on the opposite side of the spectrum, then it's just a jarring character.
Yeah. You're just drawing your OC again. Same guy, same way you always draw it.
I mean, also granted, the God of War analogy is also hard to put a finger on because there's franchise and like monetary incentive to bring him back. Like nobody thought Kratos was going to go.
There is monetary incentive on bringing back our characters as well.
Yeah, of course. So sometimes you just gotta make up a reason. There is no. That's the whole hard part about character development is that the character story might end and then you may bring him back because the project you worked on dictated so that the rights are going to expire soon. If you don't make something new for the franchise, the company is going to lose the rights.
Yeah.
So there's
you cannot corner too much your character, so you cannot work with him later on.
For your own stuff, you don't have to replicate those adversaries. You just you need to do what feels good for you. Sorry, we have a question here.
I read that back in the 60s, comics used to had a tendency to use primary colors for heroes and secondary colors for villains and anti-heroes. So my question is sort of, how does color palette sort of affects what decisions do you make in terms of characters?
That's a really good question.
Yeah, really good question.
So he asked, back in the 60s, he said, back in the 60s, main characters used to be primary colors and villains used to be secondary supportive colors. And how does that work on storytelling characters? Yeah, I mean the color on, unless it's a black and white comic book, the colors you can do so much with them. There's not one way to do it. Obviously, you can do whatever you want, but there's many ways to go about it. You can have a very desaturated atmosphere, monochromatic, and then your character is more saturated than everything else, or an opposite color in the spectrum. Like
almost red on the spectrum of the world.
Yeah, he's just red.
He's just red. So he's a huge statement in the world. So also again, it's a statement. Every decision you make, everything you do, if you are lost about where to take it, have it being informed by the story. Like you write your own story. You set a certain numbers of themes for your story.
Yeah, color, like Hellboy, it's a bold character. The character with a giant rocky arm and looks like a demon. So his color should follow the design, right? But then you have a character that it's a sad guy. It's like he's going by unseen, and that would be a different color choice.
Yeah, you can have him blend into the environment almost, because it says a lot about his character. He's getting lost in the world. He's blending into the background of the world. It's a lot of metaphors. It's like that good old joke, like, why is the curtains blue? Remember that in school? Everyone's like, who cares why the curtains are blue? It matters though, because there are rules for that. You know, if you get lost, about like what choices to make for certain character traits and whatnot, you can always fall back on those fundamental rules of, like, you know, square, triangle, circles means different things. Cool color means sad and depressing. Warm color feels warm and welcoming. There's all these simple rules you can always fall back on if you get lost. So
yeah, you can have a warm sky or a cold sky. Just so much. At the end of the day, what you're doing with comics is communicating feelings and emotions and messages. So it's not just shapes. That then starts entering into the color theory field, and it's the sky's the limit. You can really do so much. What's that guy that makes the black and white comic, and some characters have like one color, yellow.
Sin City.
Sin City, yeah.
So it's Frank Miller.
Yeah, that guy's not following any rules.
He's just doing his own thing.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
But that's also because he's a veteran and he knows how to break the rules.
Yeah.
You know?
So yeah, to answer your question really in a long-winded way, color.
Just follow the story. Like you set a certain theme for the story, and you follow those themes to the end.
What I did in my comic was I started the comic in a very colorful way. So all the characters are very saturated. Everything is very warm, and they are inside the bar. So it's like warm colors. You feel comfy. You're like, it's like a Disney story. And I contrasted that with the guys telling the story of like a horrific massacre on a boat. And the rest of the book is just really gray, all red in violent parts. And even the guy, the main character color, which was green, was kind of a neutral color, also followed like in sad parts. It looked green, but it was actually like more like a blue. So yeah, you have to keep that in mind when trying to express the tone.
This is a little bit like off, just kind of a little tangent, but a good example of this I've seen in film is the first live-action Silent Hill movie. The first live-action Silent Hill movie.
Silent Hill.
Yeah. The main character, she has over 100 dresses in the film, but they're the same dress, but each dress gets progressively darker and muddier and bloodier.
Wow.
So like they actually switched her dress out every single scene until by the end of the movie, she's literally shades darker. Yeah, so, you know, there's all this, it's all very metaphorical mumbo jumbo, but it just takes time to figure out.
Are we? I think we might have done our 50 minutes. Did we? We have 10 more minutes? That's great.
Yeah. I mean,
do you guys have any more questions? Yes, sir.
How much story framework do you get before you start finalizing and understand what you want your characters to look like?
Uh, well, in a comic, I normally would start the story from an image. So I will draw something that intrigues me, and then once that image, we call it keyframes. Just make an image that has enough information, enough storytelling in itself. What's the sorry? I don't know how to. So in this image, you will have a lot of storytelling and characters and the interacting, and you get intrigued. So from that, I'm like, oh, that's awesome. I would love to see why this is happening. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I just a guy jumping from a boat is exploding. There's tentacles over, and then I try to go back and deconstruct and try to make out a story out of it. So that's just one way to do it.
Yeah, it's not like a linear way. You don't have to.
Yeah.
You don't have to say this happens and this happens. There's one technique that's echoed in film right now is like they just want a cool action scene. They don't have a story yet.
Yeah.
That's why some of the newer Marvel movies feel kind of disjointed because they were written with the action scenes in mind. So you write the scenes you want to do. That could be a really cool scene, and then you tie your stories back to it. You have a plot device that meanders and takes your character through that scene.
So I would probably draw a character that I enjoy drawing a lot. So I will make him designed in a specific way. Later I will change him to fit the story design-wise, applying everything we spoke about before. But when I'm drawing, I'm like, this is a cool guy. I want to draw him over and over. And then the story follows. That's it.
I remember you also had a question.
Yeah, so I heard somewhere that, like when you watch the Marvel movie, the Endgame is one that came to my mind, but I thought the question was, the good characters always come from the left, they go left to right or left to right. The evil characters go right to left. Has that ever influenced anything on character design?
No,
That's
I don't
ever-
know.
I don't think so. It's more a composition thing. It's
Yeah,
just like a page flow.
Yeah, well, there is it's a whole art about it.
I mean, Western comics go from left to right. Eastern comics go
I've
from
never
right to left.
really
Yeah.
been in comic books, so
No, well,
I've been more video games.
you do definitely, if you want to imply speed, it helps if since in the West we read in the left to right, if your character is facing left on a jump, he looks faster because you're reading from left to right, so it's against your eye direction, your stare direction. You're just going like this, character's going like that. If you want to feel like you're following the character and it's like kind of in slow-mo jumping, then you will put him from looking from left to right and your eye just sticks to the character. And that will look like a slow motion.
Never heard of that.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
Yeah, you can do a ton of, I don't know all the tricks, but I know there are thousands of things you can do. I didn't know about the,
Yeah, I forgot where I heard it from, but like, it's big in like Marvel movies. Like if you think Endgame or Infinity War,
yeah,
you know, Captain America is always coming from the left,
right.
and they're heading to the right, and you know, you have Thanos and his army going from
Yeah.
right to the left.
Because the right is wrong. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
It's just something I heard, and I had never noticed it until after I heard it, and then in video games, movies, I'm always seeing that.
Yeah, I now that you say it, I seen their movies when they spawn and there's a big battle and they all fight. Normally, the bad
It's
guys.
been like on YouTube, like like the film theory channel. I think it may have been on that.
Maybe we're lying. I don't.
Maybe we don't actually know anything. Maybe this whole panel is
No,
just us
he's
talking.
right. I'm thinking now about Lord of the Rings and what the orcs were always placed when they're going to attack the castles, and they're normally on the right. But
Yeah, you never notice it until you hear it, and then
Right.
you start seeing it in like every
well,
movie.
there is confirmation bias, and they do all the takes, and we're like, we only look at the ones that are on the right. I don't know.
On the video game side, you mentioned you were a concept artist.
Yeah.
Just how much, like, is there a requirement for knowledge in 3D? Because I know certain 3D programs would translate and vice versa.
That is a very hard question to answer because every studio has their preference. For example, Naughty Dog, like they love 3D studio has their own workflow. Some studios love 2D artists. I've fortunately gone through all my 5 years of career and not have to do 3D at all.
And it depends on how realistic they want the end.
Build product.
Yeah, and also if the property is a sci-fi with a lot of hard surface and yeah, some companies want it to look exactly how it's going to look in the game or in the movie or whatever. So you have to use some 3D.
It also depends on the artist. I know artists that never use 3D, and they excel in doing hard surface science fiction designs. And because they're so damn good in 2D, companies actually want him because they want a human element. They want that traditional feeling. Yeah. Oh, who? Kai also. Shin Lam. Yeah, there's like so many amazing, fantastic traditional artists that, you know. And granted, this is a digital age, and the guy I'm talking about, he works on paper with marker and pen. Like, he is kicking everyone else's asses, you know, with traditional medium. That is incredible. Yeah.
Do you plan, when you're going to draw a comic, do you plan it before you draw?
Big time. I think most,
You have to.
yeah, half of the process is just planning, and you have to really hold yourself back, and otherwise you keep planning forever and never finish the comic. A friend of mine, the guy that wrote Lone Harbor, my comic, with me, he's into world building, and he would just go forever with lore, and I'm like, bro, no one cares. Just get it done. Just no one knows what's happening. You figure it out later. But now what's important is the story. So yeah, you will have to prepare a lot, but not too much. So at some point you have to jump in and it's like, it is what it is, let's finish it.
When you just talk about making that main character to kind of base off of later on down the road,
Yeah.
does that ever dictate a change in the story? After you've drawn a character, you're like, oh, this is not going to work this way. We have to go this direction now.
It's okay to change
Yeah.
the story at some point as long as you have a really good idea. There's something that is like, oh man, this twist is going to blow people's minds. Yeah, of course. Like, if you have a good idea at the end and you haven't started drawing that part of the book, yeah, do it. Because at that point, everything is established. The first 20 pages establishes a lot. So, and I say 20 because I normally, well, my comic has 100 pages. So the first 20 were very important. But some comics only have 20 pages. So I guess the first two are the important ones. If no one has any more questions, do you?
So last question.
What were the comments or direct stories that influenced you to like the themes and storytelling you do?
In my case, was I used to read a lot of Blade of the Immortal, the Japanese manga. I started with manga, and then there is a really good book called 28 of Dark Nights, I think it's called.
28 Days of Night.
28 Days of Night.
Yeah, so the story is in Alaska, every year there's 28 Days of Night.
Yeah, there's a movie about it. It's
Yeah.
like Alaska it stays dark for like 28 days, and the vampires just use that to
Feast on the entire town.
Yeah. And that book, it was very cool because it read like a movie, and that was what I was trying to do. 5 minutes, or we're good. 5 minutes. Yeah, I read that. Which other ones? I think more animation than anything was very influenced me. A lot of Ghibli movies, Akira, the good anime, the retro anime, Evangelion. What about you?
Me?
What influences you artistically?
Oh God, like Aliens was my Star Wars. So yeah, I love it.
Aliens.
Yeah, that's everyone's baseline. I love Aliens. Storytelling wise, world building, the amount of work and dedication James Cameron puts into his film, character development, props, sets. Like James Cameron started as a production artist. He was a concept artist. He was amongst some of the first concept artists to ever work in the film industry. And so his eyes for detail and artistic side really kind of pushes the film above everyone else's. And that always influenced how I wanted to put my characters in terms of detailing and visual storytelling, And I basically just I just drew stuff that inspired me till I
School stuff.
got my first job. It was just,
Until you start having to care about why is your design designed that way, and that's when you start learning fundamentals and stuff.
When money is on the line and you got mouths to feed, then you're going to be like criticizing your art, be like, why is the anatomy bad? Why is it not following design?
You gotta be able to explain why.
Yeah.
It's a problem.
But before that, just have fun.
Yes.
Yeah, just have fun. That's all. Like art is so hard already. It doesn't need to be more hard. Just have fun. Just keep drawing.
I agree.
Yeah. But that's a good way to sum it all up. Just keep drawing.
Yeah, I think with that we will conclude our very amateurish panel.
There we go. Yeah. Thank you guys.
Thank you guys for being here.